Monstrously amusing, a hilarious and snarky look at Pixar's Monsters Incorporated. Welcome, dear listener, to a delightful dissection of the world of Monsters Incorporated, where childlike wonder and adult skepticism collide in a cacophony of snark and absurdity. Join us as we explore the hilarious logical inconsistencies and head-scratching moments that make this 2001 Pixar classic an endlessly entertaining watch. First and foremost, let's discuss the central premise of the film, a city powered entirely by the screams of human children. While it's an undeniably creative concept, it does raise some rather pressing questions. For instance, how did the monster world come to rely on such an unconventional and ethically dubious energy source? Were there no alternative methods available, or did the monsters simply prefer the thrill of scaring children to more traditional power sources, like fossil fuels or nuclear energy? And speaking of scaring, let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer absurdity of the scare floor. In this high-stakes workplace, monsters are tasked with sneaking into children's bedrooms to collect screams, all while avoiding the dreaded touch of human children, whom they believe to be toxic. The scare floor itself is a veritable maze of doors, each leading to a different child's bedroom, but how exactly does this elaborate system work? Are we meant to believe that the monsters have instant access to every bedroom on Earth, or is there some sort of interdimensional door factory that we're not privy to? Moving on, we come to the film's central characters, James P. Sully Sullivan and Mike Wazowski. Sully, the top scarer at Monsters Incorporated, is a lovable, blue-furred giant with a heart of gold. Meanwhile, Mike, his one-eyed, green-skinned sidekick, is a sarcastic, ambitious monster with dreams of stardom. The dynamic between these two is undeniably entertaining, but it does raise a few questions. For instance, why are they so terrified of children when they've spent their entire careers scaring them? And how did a one-eyed monster like Mike manage to become a top scarer when his appearance is more comical than terrifying? In Monsters Incorporated, the plot thickens when Sully accidentally brings a human child named Boo back to the monster world. This sets off a chain of events that ultimately leads to the discovery that children's laughter is a far more potent energy source than their screams. But if laughter is so powerful, why didn't the monsters stumble upon this fact sooner? Are we to believe that they've spent centuries scaring children without ever once making them laugh? Another head-scratcher in the film is the character of Randall, the villainous, chameleon-like monster with a penchant for invisibility. While his ability to blend into his surroundings is undeniably cool, it does raise some questions about the limits of his power. For instance, why does he bother with traditional scare tactics when he could simply sneak into children's bedrooms undetected and collect their screams without any fuss? It seems that Randall's villainy is matched only by his apparent lack of common sense. And let's not forget the now iconic door chase sequence, in which Sully, Mike, and Boo must navigate a labyrinth of doors in order to escape Randall and his henchmen. While this scene is undoubtedly thrilling, it's also incredibly confusing. How do the doors manage to transport our heroes between the monster world and the human world with such pinpoint accuracy? And how do they manage to avoid the inevitable chaos of two worlds colliding? As we bring our snark-filled analysis of Monsters Incorporated to a close, we must address one final absurdity: the company's decision to switch from scream-based energy to laughter-based energy. While this change is undoubtedly more humane, it's also a logistical nightmare. Imagine having to completely overhaul an entire industry, from the scare floor to the company's name, Monsters Incorporated. More like Laughs Limited, all because one furry monster accidentally discovered the power of laughter. Talk about a corporate restructuring for the ages. Lastly, let's not forget the film's heartwarming conclusion, in which Sully is reunited with Boo after her door is seemingly destroyed. While it's a touching moment that's sure to bring a tear to even the most jaded viewer's eye, it does beg the question: how on earth did Sully manage to reconstruct Boo's door from the countless shattered pieces? Are we to believe that he moonlights as a master carpenter, or was there some secret monster magic at play? But wait, there's more! Let's dive deeper into the world of Monstropolis and examine some additional oddities that make this Pixar film such an amusingly bizarre experience. For starters, let's talk about the peculiar world building of Monstropolis. The city is powered entirely by the screams of human children, but how exactly does this work? Are we to believe that monster technology is so advanced that they can convert raw terror into usable electricity? And if they're so advanced, why hasn't the monster world discovered renewable energy sources? It's almost as if Monstropolis is stuck in some kind of alternate universe where solar panels and wind turbines don't exist. And speaking of the monster world, have you ever wondered how these creatures manage to get around without constantly tripping over their own tentacles or getting their wings caught in doorways? The sheer variety of monster anatomy on display in the film is impressive, but it also raises some serious questions about the ergonomics of everyday life in Monstropolis. Just imagine trying to design a chair that can accommodate a monster with 8 legs, 3 torsos, and a tail. Now, let's discuss the issue of monster hygiene. At one point in the film, the employees of Monsters Incorporated are subjected to a thorough decontamination process after coming into contact with human belongings. The sequence is played for laughs, but it also highlights a bizarre double standard. These monsters are terrified of the germs that might be lurking on a child's sock, yet they willingly enter children's bedrooms and inhale their screams on a nightly basis. If anything, you'd think the monsters would be more worried about catching a cold from their pint-sized energy sources. Another strange aspect of Monsters Incorporated is the film's portrayal of the company's upper management. The company's CEO, Mr. Waternoose, is depicted as a ruthless businessman who's willing to do whatever it takes to keep the company afloat, even if it means kidnapping children and subjecting them to the terrifying scream extractor. While this makes for a compelling villain, it also raises some questions about the corporate culture of Monstropolis. Is this level of ruthlessness really necessary to succeed in the monster world, or is Mr. Waternoose just a particularly nasty example of what happens when someone spends too much time in a boardroom? Then there's the issue of monster education. We're introduced to the concept of Monsters University in the film's prequel, but the original Monsters Incorporated gives us a glimpse of the rigorous training that aspiring scarers must undergo before they're allowed to set foot on the scare floor. This begs the question, what do the other monsters in Monstropolis do for a living? Are there schools for monsters who want to become accountants, chefs, or even movie critics? Or is scaring children the only viable career path in this bizarre world? Finally, we must address the film's climactic chase scene, which takes place in the Door Vault, a vast, cavernous space filled with thousands of doors that lead to the bedrooms of children around the world. While this visually stunning sequence is undoubtedly one of the film's highlights, it also raises some serious questions about the logistics of Monsters, Inc.'s operations. How do the monsters keep track of which doors lead to which children? Is there some kind of elaborate filing system in place, or do they just rely on the world's most overworked intern to keep everything organized? As we plunge even deeper into the rabbit hole that is Monsters Incorporated, let's unearth more of the amusingly absurd elements that make this film a comedic treasure trove. Have you ever stopped to think about the Monsters Incorporated dress code? There doesn't seem to be one, as some monsters are fully dressed, while others are content to let it all hang out. There's Sully, with his spotted blue fur and casual approach to clothing, Red, Non, and Mike, who rocks a single contact lens and nothing else. Then there's Roz, the perpetually unimpressed slug-like monster, who sports a sweater and glasses. It's as if the Monsters Incorporated HR department threw its many limbs in the air and said, "We're what you want, we give up." Let's also examine the unusual naming conventions in Monstropolis. While some characters have whimsical, monster-appropriate names like Fungus and Waternoose, others have more mundane monikers, such as Mike and Sully. Are there monsters named Bob and Linda roaming the streets of Monstropolis? The inconsistencies in naming patterns certainly make for an amusingly incongruous cast of characters. Another curious aspect of the film is the monsters' selective fear of human children. While they're petrified of the supposed toxicity of children's belongings, they don't seem particularly concerned about interacting with other human objects. Take, for example, the restaurant where Mike takes his girlfriend Celia for her birthday. The eatery is decorated with human artifacts like street signs and traffic lights. Do the monsters believe these objects are somehow less contaminated than a child's sock? Speaking of which, let's take a moment to appreciate the inherent irony of the monsters' terror of human children. They've built an entire industry around scaring kids, yet they're absolutely terrified of their tiny targets. It's akin to a professional lion tamer being scared of kittens, humorous, but also a little baffling. And while we're on the topic of the monster's fears, let's discuss the film's pivotal revelation that laughter is a more powerful energy source than screams. How did it take the monsters so long to figure this out? Did they never accidentally tickle a child while trying to scare them, only to be astonished by the sudden surge of energy? You'd think that in a world powered by emotions, someone would have stumbled upon this discovery sooner. Finally, let's not forget the movie's message of friendship and teamwork. Mike and Sully, despite their many differences, form an unlikely duo that saves the day and changes the course of their world. While their camaraderie is heartwarming, it's also amusing to think that Monstropolis was transformed by a giant blue furry creature and his one-eyed, wisecracking sidekick. In conclusion, Monsters Incorporated is a delightful blend of the ridiculous and the heartwarming. Its lovable characters, witty humor, and peculiar world-building make it a film that continues to entertain and amuse audiences of all ages. So, go on and rewatch this Pixar gem and revel in the charming absurdities of the monster world. Thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't.